Let's learn some tricks for using the Ferro Rod on the new Hotshot Generation 2 card. The Generation 2 Hotshot card is available right now on Kickstarter. The new Generation 2 Hotshot card is kind of unique because it helps you deal with one of your main survival priorities, and that is fire. There's a lot of different techniques to start a fire with a Ferro Rod, and I'm going to be going over all of those with you. But you're putting quite a bit of force on this, and you want this Ferro Rod to last as long as possible because you are actually wearing away this material. So turning it on edge and striking it on edge, not on the flat, is going to give you the strongest way to strike it, and it's also going to give you the most strikes out of this Ferro Rod. In future videos, I'm going to go over some of my favorite fire starting materials, and I'm going to go over things that you might have around your house that you can just use to practice with or carry in an emergency, as well as things that you would be able to find off the landscape in a true emergency. Now, all of these things are going to have similar properties. They're going to be something that's kind of light and fluffy, where a spark can catch a single strand, and then that is going to grow and help you build a fire. Now, this is just jute twine. So you've probably got this around your house. If not, any hardware store is going to have this stuff. And I carry this just for cordage. I mean, it makes a really handy cordage to have in the woods, but its primary use for me is going to be to make a fire with this. So you're going to have to process this as well as you would have to process most natural materials, and get something similar to this. This is going to be light and fluffy. This, if I was going to make an actual fire, I would want a much larger bundle of this. We call it a bird's nest, and that is about perfect for starting a fire. So a Ferro Rod works by creating a hot spark. The spark's going to be over 3,000 degrees, and you're actually taking material off of this rod. So you're going to have to scrape it off. So any hard metal tool is going to work. You can use glass, you can use a harder rock to scrape, but it has to have a sharp spine on it. So you're looking for about a 90-degree spine. So this is the striker, and you can see on its edge, that's not really going to help as much. But the bottom of this is pretty darn sharp. So with that hard edge, I'm able to create sparks without a lot of difficulty. So we've got our Ferro Rod and we've got a striker off the card. And this striker's got a little bit of a burr to it. So if you pull your finger across this in one direction, you'll feel that burr where the material is actually rolled over. If you pull your finger the other way, you're going to feel it's not quite as sharp. And you can probably make a fire with either side, but there's the sparks I'm getting on the wrong side. Now I'm going to flip this over and have the burr face the camera, and you see how much more sparks you're able to get. So when I hold this Ferro Rod stationary and I move the striker towards my fire, that's okay. That's got some uses. If I'm dealing with something that's highly combustible, that's what I'll go with. But most of the time, if you have your tinder bundle and you're pushing towards it, you've got a pretty good chance of just blowing your fire lay up, knocking your material down. A lot better technique is going to be to hold your striker stationary, and I'm going to hold this kind of with my finger on it, and then I'm going to pull it back away from myself. So with that, I can set this right down and hold it down with my striker, and just one hit, and I was able to make a fire. So if I'm using known tinder material that I know is going to strike and light up pretty easy, I will go with that pull technique. That is the best technique. But sometimes if the material is wet and I need to kind of dry it out, or it's not quite processed enough, I'll use the pump technique. So what the pump technique is it puts more sparks on the material over a longer stretch of time. With this technique, I'm actually going to pin the material to the ground directly with my Ferro Rod. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go up and down with it. And what that's going to do is going to create a lot of sparks. You can see I'm starting to cook my bench with that technique. And if you've got something that's a little bit stubborn or not processed as well as it should be, that's going to light it every time. Now I know with this material, it's going to light. The main reason I would do it with something like this is, again, if it's a windy conditions and I know that there's a pretty good chance that the material would just blow away. So I'm just going to pump on this. And it lights. So this is not my preferred technique, but sometimes it's required, so it's a good thing to keep in your mind in certain situations. So those techniques, or some variation of those techniques, are going to help you build a fire in most any condition. If you're having problems, just go back to your technique. Remember, you're going to need that sharp edge to scrape material off this. Now, if you hold this dead 90, you're not really putting as much of a burr or using that sharpened edge as well as you can. So you're going to want to hold about a 45-degree angle on this. And then when I'm holding a 45 with just a little bit of pressure, you see how well that works. And if you're coming off a little bit past your 45, if you get down into the 20-degree angle, you can see you can still make sparks, so you may think you're doing well, but that is not as effective a way as possible. So try to keep that 45-degree angle, and that is going to be your best bet for starting a fire. This is the magnesium rod off the Hot Shot card, and if you're having some problems lighting a fire, maybe the conditions aren't quite right, it's raining right this second actually, or if your materials are wet, or you're in an actual emergency, then dive right into the mag rod. So you're going to treat this just like your ferro rod. You're going to grab your scraping tool or any of the other tools on the card that have a 90-degree spine. You're going to hold this at about a 45-degree angle, and then you're just going to shave off material. I'm going to use this white card here just so you can kind of see the material a little bit better. And just like the ferro rod, we're going to scrape this on its edge. We are not going to scrape this on the flat side like it comes off the card. And it doesn't take much with this. If you can have a pile the size of a dime, that's a lot. Let's just keep going a little bit. Now this stuff burns incredibly hot. I am not going to light this on my wooden bench. I've got a sharpening stone here that I'm just going to transfer it to. So this doesn't always light with one hit, but it's going to be worth it when it does. I'm going to go ahead and just hold my striker stationary and pull away. There we go. Once it's going, it's going to just create a super hot ember. And you would place this in a tinder bundle similar to this, and it's going to help dry it out and get you a flame in a bad situation. So Grim Workshop also makes this tinder card, and this is going to work just by shaving a little bit of this edge with one of your sharpened scrapers. You could use your scraping tool, your knife, you could use the edge of your saw, you could use the pry bar. Now this is waterproof, and this is going to help you make a fire pretty darn easy in the woods. So I'm going to take this on edge with my scraper and just make a little pile here. So that's a decent enough little pile. I'm going to go ahead and just pin my scraper to the ground here. And I'm going to take my ferro rod and pull it towards me using the rip technique. And one hit. Now that took off pretty darn easy. Let's try that one more time. This is the tinder card. I'm just going to use my knife for a striker. Hold it stationary. I'm going to pull the ferro rod towards me. Look at that. So if you can't get a fire going with this thing, you should probably reconsider entering the woods. Those are some pretty solid techniques to use with the ferro rod on your new Hot Shot card. Now you can combine that with the magnesium rod as well as the tinder card, and man, you really shouldn't have a whole lot of problems making fires in the woods. Now, if you're kind of new to this, there is also some informational packets as well. So this is going to help you make a fire. It's got alternate fire starting methods. It's going over stuff that I just covered here. This information is good to have in written form too. So you can put this in a survival tent or put this in your bug out bag or just put it in your pocket. Get your new hotshot card and get out there and practice making some fires.